Shalom and welcome to the Middle East Report. In this program today we have an exclusive interview with the new Israeli spokeswoman at the Embassy of Israel. Warm welcome to the programme, and today's special guest is all the way from the Israeli Embassy in London. Her name is Orly Goldschmidt and she is the Israeli spokeswoman for the Israeli Embassy in London. Orly, welcome to the Middle East Report and congratulations on your new appointment. You have to handle the British media, which is not easy, so I'll give you an easy interview for this programme.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for inviting me.
No, it's a pleasure. We love you guys at the Israeli Embassy and think you're doing a great job. But I have to especially mention Or as well, your media assistant, who's been a great help with me in the summer, getting me some really great interviews from Israel as well. So I know you guys work hard and you've got a great team. But can you share your family story? I mean, yours is a little bit unusual, in a sense that you were saying that you're born in Switzerland and that you made Aliyah at the age of 19 and then you joined the Israeli Foreign Ministry. So tell us something about your Jewish family and background.
Yes, so I was born in Switzerland by chance, actually. My mom had a father from Iran and a mother from Iraq. Both of them made Aliyah, moved to Israel. They met in Israel and got married, and my mom was born in Jerusalem. She grew up in Jerusalem. My dad, on his side, had a father from Germany, my last name, and a mom from Poland. They met in a working camp in Switzerland during the war, the Second World War. And then they moved to Belgium, so where my dad grew up. He moved to Israel for a few years, met my mom, got married, and decided to move to Switzerland for 2 years only. And 30 years after that, they were still in Switzerland. So I grew up in Switzerland in a very, I had a very diverse background, you can say, Ashkenazi and Sephardi both, with the both cultures, different kinds of food. And it was always clear to me that home is Israel and that one day I'm moving back to Israel. There was not a question there. So after high school, I just decided to move to Israel.
Amazing. So considering that you're from the Sephardi background, which essentially for our viewers who don't know what Ashkenazi and Sephardi means, Ashkenazi is really Jews from Eastern Europe predominantly, and Sephardi are those from the East, like from the Middle East and the Arab world. But can you just describe something about the culture of the Sephardi Jews, because you are native to the Middle East and some of you, I mean, talking about Iran, but also those Iraqi Jews have been living in Iraq ever since the destruction of the first temple by Nebuchadnezzar. So your heritage, Middle East heritage, is second to none.
Yes, so to talk about the Middle Eastern culture is very broad. Every country has a different culture, and you can see that in the way they talk about the food. And sometimes there are internal wars between who owns the shakshuka or who owns the kube, you know, all sorts of food that you can taste in Israel and I guess in other places of the Middle East. So my grandmother used to cook mainly Parsi food, food from Iran, and they didn't really speak their own language at home. It was more of Hebrew. That was the language that helped them communicate because they didn't speak the same language. So in terms of culture, I think I would say, my grandmother, I remember, she would watch TV in Arabic and not in Hebrew because that would remind her of her home. And you know, at the end of the day, they are very similar to the Muslims who are still in Iraq, or to the Persians who are still in Iran. It's just that they had to move because they had no other choice.
Yeah. Amazing. And 19, it's quite a brave decision. And courageous decision to make Aliyah, because life, I could imagine, would be a lot easier in Switzerland than in Israel. But why did you decide to make Aliyah, to go and live in Israel and to make a life and a home for yourself in Israel?
Yeah, so like I said, for me, Israel was home, has always been home. I remember that when I was young, every summer we would go spend in Israel, and my grandfather used to work at the Jerusalem market. He was a seller there, and my parents knew that I loved him and I loved that place, so they would take me. I was very little, and they would put me in his stand, and I would help him selling the things that he would sell on the same day. And to me, Israel, it was not even a question. I knew that I wanted to establish a Jewish home, and I knew that Israel was the place where I wanted to be. I also needed a purpose, which I didn't have in Switzerland, and I wanted to live and work in a place that matters to me, and where I can be part of a bigger story.
Amazing. And what attracted you to join the Israeli Foreign Ministry and then desire to want to be an Israeli diplomat?
Yeah, so it goes along the same lines. I used to be a tour guide, and I would try and explain our Israel story to the tourists, and to be able to work as Israeli official representative abroad and tell our story and represent the rights of Israel, and show Israel in the way we believe should be seen is a great honor. And it has also been a long dream to me to achieve that point. So when I saw the opportunity, I didn't even think twice, and I ran up for it.
Amazing. And your previous position, you were posted in Delhi as head of the Public Affairs Department in Delhi in India. Share with us what that experience was like, representing the nation of Israel in India, and also the extent of Indian-Israeli relations that I know are very strong.
Mm-hmm. So I think I was very lucky to end up in Delhi as a first posting. I had never been in Asia before, so it was the first time. For someone who grew up in Switzerland, in a place where sometimes there was anti-Semitism and some very negative thought about Israel, when I arrived to Delhi, I was just amazed to see that there is zero anti-Semitism. They don't even know what this is. It's not in their language. And there is a lot of respect towards Israel, a lot of will to work together, to be able to achieve bigger things together. And just last year, we celebrated 30 years of diplomatic relationships between the two countries, which is really a successful story of how you can help each other and grow together and achieve great things.
Amazing. Now you are the Israeli embassies in the UK, their spokeswoman, and which you're in charge of the press team at the embassy. Just describe and think about the thoughts about this role and what it entails, because it is a tough role. You're having to deal with the British media. Some of them are very friendly. Some of them are very hostile, some of them are indifferent, and then you've also got so much of the world's media based here in London as well. So it's like the communication centre of the world. So what are your hopes and expectations in your new role? You've got a good team, I know that because I met them, but what are your expectations in your role?
Yes, so you're right. First of all, I have a very good team, which is really important. At the end of the day, I want to make an impact, and that's why I've decided to come here. As you said, the UK is a hub for journalists, for media out there in the world, and we are trying and doing our best in order to bring the Israeli story within the British media. So we try to bring interest that is also out of the conflict, that people like to report about. So we try to bring also other stories, different Israel, things that people don't necessarily know or hear about. So that's one thing we're trying to do. Second thing, we're here to give information and accurate information to journalists who are asking, or after, sometimes we read articles that we see are false or misleading. So we call the journalists and we provide them with accurate information. We're trying to be as accurate as possible and to give as much access to information as possible. So that's also one thing we're doing. And yes, it's a very tough job, as you said, but it has a very important purpose, meaning. So I'm very happy to be here.
Absolutely, and I'm honoured that you're the first person that I'm the first person that you've given an interview. So thank you for that, Orly as well. Orly, we're in this kind of unique period of British-Israeli relations. It's described as the golden era in relations between Israel and Britain as well. So what do you think are the key components that are making this relationship special? Obviously, we have a government that is very supportive of Israel right now.
Yes, so as you said, we're talking about golden era of relationship between the two countries, and I think I've arrived at the very magical point where the relation is really strong, and we saw in the last year that there was a real support from the UK government towards Israel. We could see that in the voting at the UN. We could see that as just last year, Hamas, the political branch of Hamas, was described as a terrorist organization. There is a trade agreement that has been signed between Israel and the UK, which is going to bring a lot in terms of economic stability for Israel and for the UK. And you saw also the last 2 years when COVID happened, there was a lot of discussion and help between the two countries in terms of health, and it's still ongoing. There's a lot of success stories between the two countries, so I think it's right to mention that, and I'm looking forward to see what's coming next.
Absolutely, and what's also extraordinary is that our new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, came out and made a very bold statement. I haven't heard any British Prime Minister ever say this at the Conservative Friends of Israel's conference, which was part of the Conservative Party conference in Bournemouth a few weeks ago, in which she said that she was a strong Zionist. Now, I've never heard a British Prime Minister utter those words. So what does that mean for you as an Israeli to hear our Prime Minister say that she's a Zionist? We hear sometimes our Prime Ministers say we're friends of Israel, but to say they're a Zionist or a strong Zionist, that is going so much further than friendship, isn't it? Is it not?
It shows the friendship between the two countries, between the leaders. It shows how close the relationship is and how close the ties are. It was, as you say, unheard of, and we're very happy to hear that. Absolutely.
I'd be even happier if Liz Truss is able to move the British embassy from where it is now in Herzliya, which is north of Israel, just north of Tel Aviv, to Jerusalem. What would that mean for Israelis like yourself to see the British embassy being relocated in Jerusalem, and what will that mean for Anglo-Israeli relations?
Mm-hmm. For us, Jerusalem is the capital and has been the capital for the last 3,000 years when King David decided to establish its capital in Jerusalem. So for us, it's obvious that embassies should be in Jerusalem. Tel Aviv is an amazing city, but it's like to compare Brighton and London. Brighton is an amazing city. It's nice, it's fun, there is the beach. But no embassy is there. All the embassies are in London. So for us to have embassies in Jerusalem makes sense. It's just the way it should be.
And it's also a recognition on behalf of the British government to recognise Israeli sovereignty over your city, Jerusalem, and follow in the same brave and courageous footsteps that the US President Donald Trump made back in 2018.
So for us, again, Jerusalem is the capital of the country. So yes.
Excellent. And Also, the other issue I want to discuss linked to that one as well is the great cooperation there is, isn't there, between Israel, not only in the fields of technology and innovation, because Israel's the startup nation. Like you said, there's incredible trade investment between our two nations, but there's also incredible security cooperation as well as military cooperation. So we know that over the last couple of years, we've had pilots from the Royal Air Force flying Israeli airspace, and also Israeli pilots are probably the best in the world actually flying in British airspace as well. So what does that actually mean then to have that close relationship in all aspects of life? Because previous years, Israel was pushed behind. We have a great relationship with Israel, but the British government was never prepared to do that publicly. But now we see that after Brexit, our nation is really prepared to stand with Israel. I mean, that must boost and help Israel on the world stage.
Yes, I think that countries understand that there is a lot to gain to be in good relationship with Israel. As you mentioned, Israel is the startup nation, and Israel has a lot of knowledge that they want to share, and they want other countries to gain out of it. So we are always up for more cooperations with any country that just wants.
Excellent. And you've got another general election coming up. As of this programme, the Israelis would have actually voted in their, is it the 5th election in 2 years? Just share with us something about the vibrancy of Israel's democracy and how this is so different compared to Israel's neighbours in the Middle East.
Yes, I like the way you frame it, Israel's vibrant democracy. So as you mentioned, it's going to be the 5th election in a few years. We as diplomats are actually voting next week. We're voting before the election day in Israel. It's very hard to predict who is going to be winning the elections. If it's going to be a comeback from Benjamin Netanyahu, or whether Lapid is going to win, or even maybe Gantz, we don't know yet, and I don't think we will know until last second. Also, something to bear in mind is that if and after the Prime Minister wins, he still needs to form a coalition, and that's the tough part. So he has another few weeks to try and form this coalition. Few months, sorry. So we don't know yet who is going to be winning. I'm also looking forward to the results, of course. One thing I want to mention about the current political situation in Israel is that there's been a lot of criticism around this. Some people call it a trial, but there was still, they managed to have a budget, which is something that is very important for us. I know that in the UK it's not a big deal, but in Israel it was. So the fact that there was a budget, and that it was the first time that there was within the coalition Arab voices, an Arab party. So it's something that is new for Israel, and that was very interesting, I think, also in terms of for the world to see.
Absolutely. So let's have a look now at Chris Mitchell with CBN, and this is a news report on the Israeli general election and how the parties need to win a 61% majority in order to form a coalition government in Israel.
Welcome to Israeli democracy. This is the Likud primary, almost like a carnival atmosphere, where a number of candidates are running for 25 spots on the Likud list for this upcoming election on November 1st. More than 36 political parties like the Likud either hold primary elections to determine the list of candidates, elect candidates through their institutions, or appoint them through the party leadership. When the list is chosen, those candidates will qualify for the Knesset based on the number of seats the party wins in the election. For example, if a party wins 7 seats, the first 7 people on its list get those seats. CBN News talked with Jerusalem's Deputy Mayor Flor Hassan Nahum and a candidate vying for a spot on the Likud list about the importance of November's election.
Unfortunately, we're getting attacked left and right. As you know, countries adopting BDS legislation, countries who are adopting a narrative that has got nothing to do with the reality here against Israel.
The stakes are enormous, including the Israeli-Palestinian issue, terrorism threats on each border, the future of the Abraham Accords, and at the top of the list, a nuclear Iran. Despite these pressing issues, Hassan Nahum explained why Israel has had so many elections in the past several years and what caused the most recent coalition government to fail.
We have a system which is all about pro-Netanyahu, anti-Netanyahu, people who should be in Netanyahu's camp because they're right-wing, they have almost the same opinions about almost everything, but for personal reasons, they are anti-Netanyahu. And so in the last year, we had this crazy puzzle of a government where nobody could move, nobody could say anything, nobody could do anything, because everything would offend the other people that they were sitting with.
Many hope Israel's next election brings stability, and although its politics can appear uniquely chaotic, Hassan Nahum says Israel and the U.S. share a common political bond.
If anybody has any doubt that Israel is a lively, dynamic democracy, you just have to look at the images today, and they'll know that Israel is an island in the sea. It's a democratic island, like America, same values, in a very different sea over here.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Likud primary, Jerusalem.
And we see there the vibrancy of Israeli democracy and how dynamic Israeli democracy is, especially if you compare that to the democracies in the Arab world that are virtually non-existent, because Israel is the only true democracy in the Middle East because it has democratic institutions. And that is so important, is it? When we talk about democracy, it's not just putting an X on the box in a ballot, because we know that, for example, the Iranians have elections, but they are closed elections. Only the supreme leader of Iran can determine who will stand in any presidential elections or parliamentary elections, so it's a kind of fake democracy. But Israel has all the institutions of democracy: a free press, a free judiciary. People are having that freedom of assembly and that freedom of speech as well. Share with us how unique this is, particularly to the Middle East.
Yes, exactly. So, as you're mentioning, it is the only democracy in the Middle East, which means that everyone has a right to vote to whoever they want to vote. Everyone has the right to express their views.
They do in Israel, don't they?
They do. People love talking politics in Israel, and we don't agree. It's okay. It's not a problem, but we will talk about it. And after our internal war, we will go and have lunch together, so it will be fine. But I think it's also true about you mentioned free press. Anyone can write whatever they want about the political system, or about anything else in Israel. It's completely free, and it's okay. And it's something that is unheard of, and I think that's also maybe one of the reasons why UK press love reporting about Israel as well. It's because they know that they can write whatever they will want, and it's okay. It's something that Israel embraces. So I'm very proud to be living in Israel, which is such a democratic country.
And Orly, can you just describe the biggest existential threat facing Israel, a nuclear Iran, and Israel's concerns if the world's most dangerous regime ends up having the world's most dangerous weapon, i.e. nuclear weapons?
Yes, Iran is definitely a threat, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's an existential threat to Israel only or to the Middle East. I think it's a real threat to the stability of the whole world. Of course, it's a threat to Israel, but we know that Iran are using their proxies in Lebanon with the Hezbollah, or in Yemen, Or even a few weeks ago, there was a cyber attack in Albania, and there was an attack in Argentina, and there was an attack in the Red Sea. And you know, they can get anywhere, everywhere. It's not only about Israel. I think it's way bigger than that. And we cannot allow them to acquire nuclear weapons. We know that they are not for civilian purposes. They are for other uses, and we need to be very careful. It's something that needs to be taken really seriously.
And what are your thoughts on the Biden administration and the EU wanting to bring the Iranian back from the cold as they are currently kind of renegotiating the Iran deal known as the JCPOA that was signed in 2015, which would result in billions in sanctions relief. It means the regime could sell its oil and natural gas as well. And there's danger that they could use that money to kind of fund and support increased terrorism around the world. But also the thing that troubles Israel, I think the most, isn't it, is something known as the sunset clause, which means in any agreement with the Iranian regime, within 5 or 6 years, or even less than that, they could have nuclear weapons anyway. So what is the point of having an agreement with the Iranians? You give them billions in sanctions relief, then you say, well, in a few years' time, you can have nuclear weapons anyway. It's just a kind of description of what I can only describe as absolutely insane foreign policy.
Yeah, so it's exactly that. It's not that Israel is against a deal with Iran. We think that a deal could be an important step. The current JCPOA agreement, or nuclear deal as they call it, is not good enough, is not strong enough. And you were mentioning the sunset clause. The more we wait, the more irrelevant it will be, because in a few years' time they will be able to enrich their uranium again. So if there is a deal between the parties, it should be much stronger and it should last longer. That's what Israel would want to see. I understand that for now it's not, it is not happening. Maybe in a few months' time it will be back in the table.
So let's have a look at this excellent CBN news report that looks at how the Biden administration are trying to push through a new agreement with the Iranian regime on its nuclear weapons program.
After months of negotiations, the U.S. and Iran are at a deadlock over removing Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps from the Foreign Terrorist Organization list.
The IRGC has American blood on its hands, and there's no good reason for the United States to even consider lifting this FTO designation.
Middle East expert Eli Konim says bipartisan support on Capitol Hill is building to keep that designation in place.
You're hearing from many, both Democrat and Republican members of Congress, who have voiced their concern to the Biden administration that there's no good reason to lift that FTO designation.
Even if that stipulation remains and the deal is signed, concern is growing that it will pave the way to nuclear proliferation in the Middle East.
The Saudis already have agreements with the Pakistanis. They funded the Pakistani nuclear project, and they are ready to procure nuclear weapons the moment this agreement is signed, and they understand that Iran is moving towards nuclear capabilities. So what we will see is proliferation of nuclear capabilities all over the Middle East.
Avivi also told CBN News the agreement would have global implications.
This is not talking about threat in the Middle East. This is a whole new globe. It's a whole new world. It's a threat for humanity. And therefore, I cannot understand why the European Union and this current US government is pushing towards enabling this vicious regime who calls America the big Satan and calls Israel the little Satan. Let them have nuclear capabilities.
As it stands, the nuclear agreement also promises sanctions relief that would release nearly $100 billion to the Iranian regime. Avivi and others believe the money would not only fund Iranian partners in the region, like Hezbollah and others, it could also reach allies closer to the U.S., like Venezuela, which Avivi calls Iran's Cuba.
Excellent report there, as always, by Chris Mitchell from CBN. And we have to be very much aware that the international community needs to do more to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. And Orly, share with us the significance of the incredible Israeli operation to seize tons of Iranian material detailing their nuclear weapons program carried out by Israel's special forces, and to bring it back to Israel, detailing their nuclear weapons program and how extensive that program is.
Mm-hmm. So recently the Iranians, in order to sign that deal that you were mentioning, have requested IAEA to turn a blind eye on the files that they are investigating. So now we want to ask that question: what are those files, and why is Iran willing the IAEA to close a blind eye and not to investigate those files? So what you can find in those files is that there has been nuclear activity in different sites in Iran, and that activity was for military purposes, not for civilian purposes. That they've been enriching uranium, and that they are not too close to having the nuclear capacity. Now, IAEA is still investigating, and it takes time, but we should not accept to close those files before the investigation. That would undermine the IAEA's importance, and that would just give Iran the money that they want, not in order to build schools or build hospitals or give women their rights. It will just serve for their purpose, for having more terrorism, for giving weapons to their proxies, for bringing terrorism not only in Israel and the Middle East, but in the whole world.
And Orly, just describe for us the dangerous situation that Israel faces in the north of Israel, particularly in southern Lebanon with Hezbollah. They have in the region of 160 to 180,000 rockets and missiles targeted on Israel. And the great concern for Israel that the Iranian regime will be supplying Hezbollah with precision-guided missiles, and how much of a game changer that. Can you please outline for our viewers how serious this is for Israeli security for Hezbollah to have precision-guided missiles?
Hezbollah is now, as we know, a proxy of Iran. So it means that Iran is in our border, which is very dangerous for Israel, and we cannot let that happen. So we have to be very careful, and we have to be vigilant. But I want to talk about something that is a historical moment for us. 2 days ago, there was this discussion about a deal between Israel and Lebanon in the maritime border. And this is something that is really historical for us. The deal being signed will bring economical stability to Israel and to Lebanon. To the people of Lebanon, not to the Hezbollah, to the civilians, and it will allow for a better security between the countries. And moreover, now we're talking about a world crisis in terms of gas supply. So the fact that they will be able to extract gas and sell it towards Europe is, I think, a win-win situation in terms of today's.
Orly, can you just share with us Israel's amazing discovery over the last few years of finding natural gas off Israel's coast in the Mediterranean, and how Israel could become the answer to Europe's energy crisis?
So, as you say, Israel has discovered this amazing natural resource around the coast, and is already working on it and trying to extract gas in order to sell it to our friends, our partners in Europe. It would also bring stability to the region, to our neighbors, to Lebanon, to Egypt, and hopefully we will be able to, I don't know if we can save the Europe from the gas crisis, but of course we can, I think the gas that we have can really help in relieving some of the pressure that Europe is facing right now.
Amazing. And can you also then talk about the success of the Abraham Accords, particularly the flourishing relationship between Israel and the United Arab Emirates now, and the fact that Israeli tourists are flying over to the United Arab Emirates, there's cultural exchanges, there's educational exchanges, there's a huge amount of the United Arab Emirates investment in Israel, in Israel's innovation and technology. Just share with us how this relationship has really sprung out of the Abraham Accords, which is shaping and changing the whole dynamics of the Middle East.
Yes, exactly. So the Abraham Accords that we've celebrated a few weeks ago, 2 years ago. So they are really shaping a new Middle East. We see a change of paradigm in the Middle East. We see that many countries want to be in good terms, in a good relationship with Israel. So of course UAE, but also Morocco, and now there are flights over Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, you mentioned. And it's very interesting time for us. I don't know if you know, but in the last 2 years, over 500,000 of Israelis have traveled to Dubai.
Wow!
And it's while there was COVID, so it means that it's not even 2 years. You go to Dubai, you have kosher restaurants, you have synagogues, you have a real Jewish life there, which is something that is really unbelievable. And yes, there's a lot of agreement, a lot of business and trade, and we will see more along the years. And I hope that more neighbors will want to be part of these Abraham Accords and will want to join this agreement.
And of course, the big one we're waiting on is for the Saudis to join, right?
Yes.
And yeah, moving on to some of the other issues, I suppose the other kind of big issue that we see in the Middle East today, and I'd love to know your thoughts on what's happening in Iran right now. We know that Iran is the enemy. Well, not the people of Iran, but certainly the regime of Iran is the enemy of the people of the Middle East. And of course, they've been in power since '79 with the Islamic Revolution, and their sheer dominance over the Iranian people, which is one of the world's most dangerous, foul regimes. But what we're seeing really, aren't we, is the Iranian women particularly leading what could be a revolution against this regime. Share with us the plight of how Israeli women are courageously and bravely standing with Iranian women in their fight for freedom.
Yes, so you're right, it's not the people of Iran, it's the Iranian regime. And like I told you, my grandfather was from Iran. In Israel, there is a lot of this Iranian culture still very alive. We have Iranian singers, we have Iranian actors. So in the cultural world, Iran is very present. In the food, the language, everywhere, you have a lot of Iranian prints. You can also see on social media the conversations between Israelis and Iranians. So the people-to-people conversation is getting bigger and bigger, which is really nice to see. About the situation right now in Iran, I think it's horrific what we're seeing in the news. And I feel such a pride that it's a women leading movement. Hopefully will lead to a change in the government. I'm very hopeful. They need to have basic rights, equal rights, human rights in general in Iran. And I hope that we will be able to see a change.
Absolutely. So let's have a look at this CBN News report looking at the situation in Iran, particularly the courage and the bravery shown by so many Iranian women to actually defy the Iranian regime.
These students are shouting death to the dictator. What began as protest over the death of a 22-year-old woman, Mashara Mehdi, for not wearing her hijab properly, has become a cry for regime change. The cries have now become a global movement. In the streets of Paris, Rome, Toronto, Santiago, Chile, and many other cities, hundreds of thousands have gone to the streets. One act during these protests is women cutting their own hair.
I cut them for show my solidarity with the women in Iran, because it's the minimum things that I can do.
And all I have to say about this is that it's about time, because for over 40 years, the people of Iran have been dealing with this. And the West, despite the fact that they're supposed to be a bastion of liberal values, true liberal values and progressive values, equality between men and women, we have not stepped up enough when it comes to supporting the people of Iran against this dictatorship.
In Iran, members of the parliament shouted their loyalty to Iran's supreme leader, and Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi vowed the protesters would pay a price.
Those who took part in these disturbances and disturbed the security of the society and harmed people's lives and belongings must be brought to justice, including those who provoked them or encouraged them to protest.
So far, Iranian police have killed nearly 150 people during the protests. This scene shows a policeman shooting a demonstrator in cold blood. Hundreds more have been arrested and reportedly tortured. The latest epicenter of the protest seems to be Sharif University in Tehran. Reports on social media say it's become a battlefield after military forces surrounded the school without allowing students to leave. Reza Pahlavi, the son of Iran's Shah who held power before the Iranian Revolution, tweeted, "The Islamic Republic is firing on students at Iran's Sharif University. Yet reports indicate the U.S. may send this criminal regime billions yet again."
And we really need to pray and stand with the brave and courageous women and also men that are standing up against this brutal regime in Iran. And it's about time they had their freedom and enjoy the freedoms that we have in the West, because they deserve it. Orly, just compare a little bit, because we know that Israel is not in Europe. You're not in North America, you're in the Middle East, which is the most hostile, dangerous region of the world. But share with us the freedom that women have in Israel compared to the rest of the Middle East and particularly Iran.
So women in Israel have complete equal rights with men. You can see women in every spectrum of the society. Everywhere they are represented. We have 9 Israeli women in the government. We have a woman as an ambassador here in the UK. So really, they have the same rights as men, and soon they will be equal in all the, hopefully, in all the ministries as well.
And of course, you've forgotten to mention Golda Meir, Israel's
Golda Meir, yes.
first prime minister back in the
right, yes.
early 70s. And then also Israeli women actually flying in fighter jets as well in combat missions.
Yes,
so that's something else which is incredible.
We have the same rights and the same duties. So Israeli women go to the army as well.
Excellent. And also talking about something which is so significant that affects Israel as well, and that is Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. And we've seen literally over the last few months, over 30,000 Ukrainian Jewish people make Aliyah, including Russians and those from Belarus as well. Isn't this the biggest wave of Aliyah that we've seen in decades happening this year in 2022?
Yes, so we are always concerned for the Jews in the diaspora in any country. And Israel has always been open to receiving Jews from the whole world in case of crisis. The last 2 years have seen a lot of Jewish people coming from Ukraine and Russia to Israel. I think it's even about 45,000, if I'm correct. And of course, Israel is open for them, and they will have them integrated within the society.
Excellent. And can you also share something that we all need to stand up against? And that's the rise of Jew hatred that we're seeing in Britain and Europe and around the world, reaching levels that we haven't seen since the 1930s, and particularly very prolific on social media as well. How important is that we, all of us, including our viewers as well, make a stand and do all that we can to kind of stamp out and say this is totally unacceptable?
Yes, so when I hear students here in the UK who are afraid to say at university that they are from Israel, I'm shocked. Or when I see on social media, the other day I saw a short video of 2 Jewish men coming out of their shop and getting beaten just because the fact that they were Jewish. It's really disturbing today to see that. I know and I can say for sure that we are getting full support from the UK government, from the Home Office and from the British police in order to eradicate anti-Semitism. It's something that needs to come from the roots, so it needs to be, there need to be talk about it in schools, in primary schools, university, and hopefully we'll see a difference.
Absolutely, and a big part of this is Holocaust education, isn't it? Teaching children about the horrors of what happened in the Holocaust, and to keep that fresh in people's minds, that if we don't stand up to anti-Semitism, or a better terminology is Jew hatred, then this is what could happen if we don't do anything.
So it's very important to teach about what happened during the Holocaust and the mechanism that brought to the final solution, and to talk about the fact that the people who made those decisions were normal people. They were like you and me. They had PhDs at universities. They were not random extremist people. They were just normal people. So it can happen anytime, anywhere.
Excellent. And Orly, you know, for our Christian viewers watching this program today, very pleased that you're in this new role of being the Israeli embassy spokeswoman. But how can the Christian community in the UK really stand with Israel and the Jewish people at this time?
So, you know, Israel is a country that wants peace, and we want to bring the Israel story out there. And I think one of the ways that you can contribute to that is, I'm going to talk to the...
yeah, talk to our viewers, go ahead.
To the viewers directly. Come to Israel and visit our country and talk to our people and get to know the Israelis, the broad Israel, and understand what we are doing and what we're living there. There's a sentence that says that what you see from here, you don't see from there. So it's really about that. It's about seeing Israel the way it really is, with its complications and with the conflict. And it's not easy, and it's not a simple country, but that's what makes it so interesting and so vivid. And I'm sure they'll have a great experience.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to ask you a question that's a bit off script now, because you were a former tour guide. Now, for our viewers watching that haven't been to Israel or been to Israel loads of times, what are some of the very special places that they can visit in Israel that that the tourists wouldn't know?
For Christians in particular?
Well, anyone to go and visiting Israel.
Okay, so of course Jerusalem is really important, but not only the main site. They need a car. 20 minutes from Jerusalem, you have these amazing forests and these walks where you can get to a sudden river where you can dip into it in summer. It's amazing. I think Israel in general is endless of these hidden oasis places where you just hike, especially in the north of Israel, in the Golan, but also in the desert. You hike for a few hours and suddenly, poof, you see some, we call them lake, but it's, you know, for British people, it would not even be a river, it would not even be so small. For you, it would be insignificant, but for us, water is really important. So I would suggest to people to go outside of the real touristic places, take a backpack and good shoes and start walking.
Amazing. Yeah, because Israel's amazing like that, and there are some really special places we find. We've got 3 minutes left of the programme, and I suppose one thing we have to talk about, and we haven't had enough time to talk about, that is to re-energise the Christian support base for Israel, particularly after COVID, because there are very few pro-Israel meetings happening. There's a bit of a disconnect now between the Israel supporters and Israel. And now that looks like we're out of COVID altogether, and that we can now fly to Israel, how important is it that our viewers re-engage with Israel, with the Israeli people, as well as engaging with Israel as a country and with your embassy, with the excellent work that you guys do there, representing the state of Israel to our nation?
Yeah, for us, this support means a lot. It really is important for us to feel that we are supported and to have your viewers know that Israel is a country that thrives to have all the religions living together. It's the only country in the Middle East where you have bigger numbers of Christians every year. We want to show coexistence, and I think that your viewers can really talk about the coexistence that they will see in Israel. So your support is, of course, very important, and we really appreciate it, and we don't take it for granted.
No, it's a pleasure, and I think it's important that, you know, as Christians, we understand the significance of Israel, because literally we've seen the scriptures fulfilled in Isaiah and Jeremiah come true in our day. And we just talked about, you talked about 45,000 Jewish people making aliyah from the Ukraine, from Russia, from Belarus, which is unprecedented. And to know that Israel is a safe haven for Jewish people fleeing persecution around the world, but also Israel is that light, beacon of light and liberty in a very, very dark region of the world. And that's why the view that we get of Israel on our mainstream media is the complete different view to how Israel actually is. And I think, Orly, you've represented and you've shown the heart of Israel today on this program, and this is why you have our complete unconditional support. And just know that ourselves as a channel, but also our viewers are standing with you, supporting you, praying for you, and speaking up for Israel at this very crucial time in world history.
Thank you so much, Simon.
And I just want to thank you for watching this program at home. Please, let's continue to pray for Israel and the Jewish people, but also we need to support the incredible work being done by the Embassy of Israel in the UK, because there are connection between our nation and the nation of Israel, and therefore they need all our support. So I want to thank you for watching this program, and we'll leave you with this wonderful video produced by the Israeli Foreign Ministry that shows Israeli women in support of those brave and courageous women in Iran who are fighting for their freedom against this oppressive regime.
We support Iranian women.
We support you.
Israel, love you.
The women of Israel will always stand with you.
We will always remember you, Mahsa.
We will never forget you.
We will never forget you.
Every woman deserves to be free.
You are in our hearts.